Hello and welcome. Do you believe the polls? Well, if you're closely following the race to the White House, you'll have noticed numbers regularly thrown at you as the pollsters tell you who's ahead, almost by the hour. The political polling showing the American electorate to be almost evenly divided between support for Senators John McCain and Barack Obama. How does that reflect any divisions among Americans when it comes to culture, values, and the future? Since the 2000 US election, pundits and analysts have been saying that there are two Americas, one red representing the Republicans and one blue for the Democrats. Not so fast, says our guest today, who's considered one of America's top pollsters. John Zogby argues that nothing could be further from the truth when it comes to the people here. He says the American dream is actually in transition. In his new book, The Way We'll Be, Zogby draws on thousands of in-depth surveys to map out where America's heading politically, socially, and spiritually. On today's show, we ask, is America's future bright, and what does it mean for the rest of the world? John, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Riz. What a pleasure.
It's a pleasure from my side. And I have to, before I get onto the book itself, I have to ask you, or I have to say, we're all ready to move on from this election. Who's going to win?
Oh, I'm not going to do that. Sorry to not give you an exclusive. But advantage Obama today. But look, there's a couple of weeks to go.
Now, your latest poll, as we do this show, has Barack Obama down a full point and John McCain up 0.8 of a point. Contrary to other polls, where Senator Obama is rising quite a lot against Senator McCain. One, for example, the Washington Post ABC News poll has Barack Obama up 10 points. Why is there such a difference between polls?
Well, to clarify, as of last night, I had Barack Obama leading by 4. He had been leading by 6. So he's still leading. And if you look at my poll is just a little bit more compressed. The others are saying the same thing, but maybe in extreme. But I think that there's a fundamental stability to how people identify themselves by political party. And so I'm very cautious to make sure that we have a proper representation of both Democrats and Republicans in my sampling. Sometimes I'm not so sure that some of my colleagues are as cautious.
Well, I know in your book, The Way We'll Be, you say that there are various looming factors that can come in and affect a poll. What do you see as the most serious factors affecting the poll on this election?
I think the very fact that we have a center that's back in American politics that was gone in 2004. There's a middle, they are undecided. Many of them, to be honest, are not paying attention, and they're not going to make their decisions until the last few days, maybe even the last minute. And that's the sort of thing that can throw an election into a tizzy one way or another.
Now, interestingly enough, reading your book, I actually came away feeling very positive about the way America's going. You know, a lot of the things that I thought might be going one way seem to, but judging by the facts you come up with from your polls, seem to be going the other way. When the image of America is generally perceived to be so bad among other countries, with America pictured as a sort of greedy, over-consuming, bully kind of country on the world stage, what is it that makes you so adamant? What are the figures that tell you it's actually not necessarily the case?
Well, first of all, let me quote an Arab diplomat that I talked to just a couple of months ago who said, look, America is fine. We love it. It's the United States that troubles us. So there's a real difference between how America and its values and its successes are viewed versus U.S. policy. That's first and foremost. But secondly, I think what emerges are two major themes here in this book. One is that Americans, by and large, are learning to live within limits and learning to see that they're not the only people on this planet. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but that in itself is a healthy attitude as we move into the future, a global future. The second, that I'm really very high, Riz, on young people, 18 to 29-year-olds, who are not perfect. I hasten to add that, but who have a planetary sense, a sensibility like no other age cohort. I call them America's first global generation. 56% and growing have passports, have traveled abroad. They are as likely to say, I'm a citizen of the planet Earth, as they are to say, I'm a citizen of the United States. 23%, 1 in 4 say, I expect to live and work in a foreign exotic capital at some point in my life. They're the least likely to say that American culture is inherently superior to cultures of other continents in the world, and so on and so on. These are attitudes, I think, that are geared for our next world.
Very different also from the very insular image of America that most people see. Now, I'm going to quote your book on the issue of First Globals. When you write about First Globals, you say, First Globals lean left. 2 out of 3 say that abortion is always or usually morally wrong. Globals seem determined to find a middle ground on the hot button issues. These are extracts from your subject on Globals. Now, you talk about conflicting values and how there is that attempt to find some sort of compromise. Is that, in your opinion, you say it's actually a softening of the hard lines. Is it could it also be perceived as hypocrisy that people say, well, I want to go one way, but I also think I should go another way?
I don't think that hypocrisy accurately defines really many people, the general public. Conflicting values do. Not just First Globals, but an honest individual can say, you know what, I oppose abortion. In fact, I think it's killing a life. And 5 questions later, in response to another question, say, but I believe a woman has a right to choose. How can that be? Well, those are 2 core values, life on one hand, choice on the other, and people can honestly be conflicted on that, and we see that in a whole host of issues. But for First Globals, for young people, on one hand, they do, in fact, lean left when it comes to multilateralism, multiculturalism. This is the world in which they've grown up in, and they don't see the U.S. government acting alone, the U.S. government acting as a cowboy overseas, as very helpful. That's the world in which they live. By the same token, they take an issue like abortion, and I think maybe one would argue in a very healthy way, contrary to my generation that really messed up on this issue. They're saying, you know what, give me the specific situation, then I'll tell you whether it's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. And I think there's kind of a refreshingness about that.
Interesting you raised that issue, because we had an email that came in from Abu Dhabi. So let me get to the first of the emails we had in for you. And Samawan Osman in Abu Dhabi in the UAE says, with the collapse of the US economy, the world seems very different and multipolar, not just one arrogant superpower anymore. America has made plenty of mistakes abroad, and it's forever lost the trust and best wishes of mankind. Do you feel that can be turned around if that's the case?
Can it be turned around? Oh, absolutely. As you know, Riz, I poll all over the world, and I poll in the Arab world. And basically, there is still a reservoir of goodwill towards America, its values, its system, its people, its products. It's still the platinum or gold standard when it comes to education and science and technology. It is U.S. policy that is wrong-headed and that has really made not just serious mistakes, I mean just serious life-threatening flaws in an entire region. And that just requires a change of administration, which we will have one way or another, and a change in the definition of our role in the world. And I think that Americans will vote in a few weeks to determine what that change will be.
John, in the book you have some interesting, like this expression, First Globals, and some interesting premises. And I want to put one to get you to explain this one for our viewers and let me know how you think it's changed America. And that's the term investor next door, the investor next door phenomenon.
You know, when we think of investor, we think of Wall Street, we think wealthy, we think greed is good. There was a movie, Wall Street, in fact, starring Michael Douglas, that defined our concept of investor. But in reality, in the last 12, 15 years, we've had a revolution in private investment, 401ks, IRAs, individuals with life savings in the stock market of $30,000, $50,000, $5,000, some of whom, half of whom, in fact, say, I'm a member of the investor class. They don't watch the stock market every day, but they watch it. This is their future. They are modest in terms of their expectations. They only want to live comfortably. They don't dream of the big house, the exotic vacation. They want to put their kids through school. And at the same time, they're also socially responsible investors. They want to invest in companies who may not make as much money on the bottom line, but who do good things in the world. This is a whole new group, the investor class, and they're like you and me. That's why I call them the investor next door.
And it ties into this concept you also have of the ownership society, doesn't it, John?
It does. That is something, interestingly, that George W. Bush and Karl Rove defined, the whole notion of the ownership society, which is a conservative concept, but a real concept. Americans don't hate the wealthy. They simply want to be part of a system that gives them opportunity. We're not socially class-driven. We want to own our own home. We want to dream our own dream, succeed as much as is possible that is not unrealistic. And part of that is the ownership society, controlling my own money.
All right, John, don't go away. We have many more questions for you. We're back with more of our discussion with top pollster John Zogby after the break. Don't go away.